Barnwell, the first couple weeks of the NFL season are always treacherous territory. It's very hard to know what we actually should believe in and what we shouldn't. The famous example that everyone has talked about in the last week or so is what the New Orleans Saints looked like on offense last year for the first 2 weeks and how that was a false signal for how the rest of the season would go. So today we're going to play a little game. We've done this before on the podcast. I think after week 2 is the time we've done it before. We're going to play a little Is This Real? With some of the bigger storylines from the first 2 weeks of the NFL season.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was one of the people buying the New Orleans Saints after 2 weeks last year. So maybe that's not the best indicator for how this is going to go. I'm just going to say I did not realize Clint Kubiak was going to disavow play action after the first 2 weeks of the season when it was working at like a 50% clip for him through 2 games.
I think there are some elements of the Saints offense falling off that were their fault and some that were not. The offensive line getting very, very
Eric
injured.
McCoy specifically.
Eric McCoy getting hurt and then losing all of your pass catchers over the course of the season. It's typically hard to field a good NFL offense if that's the case. So I think some of that is a lesson to be learned about what we should and should not believe in the first couple weeks of the season. And some of it is a lesson about how attrition happens to football teams in the NFL over the course of the year.
And they did lose Derek Carr as well at some point during the season, which does not help matters. To be fair, they did lose him on, for some reason, Derek Carr's zone read keeper, which seems like maybe that's not, I don't know, Maze, the best use of Derek Carr. It kind of felt like maybe they had a Taysom Hill package and then Taysom Hill got hurt and they were like, oh, let's just use Derek in this instead. That's not a good idea. Don't do that.
Let's start this exercise with, to me, the most analogous situation to the 2024 New Orleans Saints, and that is what the 2025 Indianapolis Colts offense has looked like over the first 2 weeks. Through 2 games, the Indianapolis Colts offense, number 1 in success rate, according to True Media, over 50% of their snaps. They are currently 6th in offensive DVOA over those first 2 weeks. The Indianapolis Colts, as one of the best offenses in the league, is this real?
Yeah, I'm gonna go no on that one. I think I'm gonna try to have learned my lesson. But maybe let's talk about why I think what we saw from the Colts is not sustainable. Because even if we're gonna have a conversation about the Colts not being the best offense in football, I don't think we can be smarter than that. We don't have to have that conversation. Is this going to be a good or maybe even very good offense moving forward?
Would you change your answer to the question if that was the framing?
No, I would not.
Okay.
I am skeptical for a few different reasons. I would say this much. First and foremost, is there anything in the Colts' performance that is not sustainable to me? The answer is yes. Daniel Jones, in terms of the way he's playing, the efficiency with which he's playing, totally unprecedented over the course of his career. And I will give you one thing here that comes to mind, that is sort of the starting point for all of this. He ran an 8.5% sack rate during his time with the New York Giants. It's not a great offensive line for the vast majority of that span. But if you watch Daniel Jones play, you know that he was also responsible for a fair number of those sacks. He is at 3.1% through 2 weeks, Maze. He has not turned the ball over. No interceptions, no fumbles for a guy who had major fumble issues earlier in his career. He's not taking sacks, which may be leading to not having as many fumbles. I don't believe Daniel Jones has turned into Josh Allen in terms of avoiding negative plays. Just not something you do overnight like that to solve your problems. And that manifests in a couple ways. Number one, it makes it less likely that you're going to end up in negative game scripts, which has been something that the Colts have been playing from ahead or playing from a relatively close margin against the Broncos and the Dolphins the first 2 weeks of the year, which really helps. And then I think you're not put into negative game scripts and aren't in a situation where those plays are more likely to happen, because when you are trailing by 10, 14, 21 points, teams can pin their ears back and come after you. The run game is not a threat, and you're more likely to be throwing frequently enough that you're going to throw interceptions and turn the ball over with fumbles. So I think a lot of this is game script. A lot of this is just an incredible avoidance of negative plays. I just don't see how that keeps happening for any extended period. Like, what about Daniel Jones do you think has changed to make that more likely to be the case moving forward?
It's a great question. And I forgot that you're an interesting person to ask this question because of how you've watched Daniel Jones over the last 7 years of your life.
I'm not saying with one hand over my eyes for the vast majority.
I'm not saying that makes you an unreliable voice on the subject matter. I'm just saying
Thank
it
you.
does color the way that you're going to look at
Whoa,
this.
thank you for bringing me onto your show, deciding what the topics are, picking the Colts first, and then saying you're not a reliable source.
I
That's
didn't
on you.
really
That's
think
not on me.
I didn't really think about that as I laid out how the rundown was going to go, but I do think it's at least worth mentioning. I understand where you're coming from. I'll present this to you. So it was an
Mhm.
8% sack rate with the Giants there were some years, and we've talked about this a lot on our show. The 2023 Giants offensive line is probably the worst offensive line I've ever watched since covering the NFL.
Mhm.
So let's just say it lands somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
It's not 3%, it's not 8%, it's 5%. He just takes like a normal sack rate over the
Mhm.
course of the season. If I told you that was going to be the case over the year, where he finished 16th in sack rate or like 20th in sack rate over the course of the
Mhm.
season, would you choose to believe that the Colts could be a top 10 offense?
No. I still don't, because on top of all that, Maze, we're looking at a quarterback who has played one full season so far as a pro, who's gotten injured
Listen,
every
Anthony
single year.
Richardson's ready. Their backup is a top 5 pick.
There is sometimes you try to go back and say, okay, what was the logic that was happening here? And there have been times where teams have just been totally off. Like, I remember there was it Joe Germain? Was he the quarterback on the 2001 Patriots who was not Drew Bledsoe or Tom Brady? I think there was like a real conversation about, should we play, or was he with the Rams? Was that the Kurt Warner Rams? In
I don't know,
that
you're
time
asking the
frame.
wrong guy.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were not on your Joe
I
Germain
was in middle school.
grind.
I'm not sure what the dynamics of the backup quarterback situation were for the
Okay, but
for the
you
Patriots
get
and
the
the Rams
idea. We're
back then.
talking about a situation where, for weeks in the preseason, at least publicly, there was a legitimate conversation about, should we play Anthony Richardson, the least accurate quarterback in modern NFL history by error-adjusted completion percentage, or Daniel Jones, who apparently is now the NFL QB1. Like, that seems to reinforce that maybe even the Colts did not expect Daniel Jones to be anywhere near this good through 2 games.
I'm already scared before I even say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I do think it's kinda real. And I think it's real to this extent. I do not
Okay.
think the Colts are gonna finish number 1 in offensive success rate by the end
Sure.
of the season. I do not believe
Sure.
this. I think they can be a back half of the top 10 offense over the course of the year.
Sell me. Sell me on this one.
I believe, and I said this coming into the season. We tried to lay
Mhm.
out what success looked like for the Colts. And in my mind, success for the Colts was every other aspect of the offense beyond the quarterback is so undeniable, including the play caller, that you
Mhm.
have to stick with this group moving forward because of how many strengths there are. And I
Sure.
do think that all those other facets are very strong. And I think you've seen that play out over the first 2 weeks. In week 1, they're hitting a ton of chunk plays down the
Mhm.
sideline against a Miami Dolphins secondary that is a mess. We all know this, right? Like the outside corners for the Dolphins, there's a lot left to be desired. That is
Sure.
not the case for the Broncos. You know,
I agree.
Riley Moss is whatever Riley Moss is, but you have the defensive player of the year on the
Mhm.
other side. The Colts pass catching group is so deep and
Yeah.
so varied that wherever your weaknesses are, they can pick on them, and they have a play caller and an offensive staff who's capable of devising that sort of game plan. And you look at what Josh Downs was doing from the slot in this
Mhm.
game, you look at what Tyler Warren was doing, they essentially circled Brandon Jones and the
Mhm.
linebackers, and they were like, "This is what we're gonna do today." And we have such dynamic pieces at every single one of these spots that we are capable of attacking you this way. The Broncos are
I'll
not the Dolphins.
I'll take it one further. They hit mesh. I'm going to bring up mesh on the show. They hit mesh on that third down to set up the game-winning field goal with Alec Pierce on Pat Surtain and completed it and hit it. Like, they were even willing in the right spot, not just we're going to blindly throw at the best cornerback in football, but when they got the right opportunity, they were very comfortable throwing at Pat Surtain and had some success doing so because it was only going to be in very specific man situations where they had man beaters on.
I just think that they have truly, in my opinion, the deepest group of pass catchers in the entire league. I think they go 5 deep with this group because I just don't think there's another team where your 5th option is capable of doing what A.D. Mitchell can do to you
Mhm.
in one-on-one situations outside the numbers. And then what Jonathan Taylor has been for them in the pass game
Mhm.
over the first couple games, not just as a receiver, but in pass protection in week
He's
1.
been incredible.
That's why I think the sack taking, even if I feel like some of that is on Daniel Jones, I think that just how tightened up the pass protection with this group has
Mhm.
been over the first 2 weeks, even against the Broncos and a Dolphins front that has a lot of talent. I think there's just something here. And the entire argument for Daniel Jones coming into the season was all we need him to do is be a point guard that is pretty accurate and doesn't make
Mhm.
mistakes with this group because we feel so strongly about the other offensive talent otherwise. And I think with the amount of motion that they're using,
Mhm.
66% motion rate for the Colts this year is about 55% last year. This
Mhm.
is an offense that is very consciously being built through the pass catchers and has
Mhm.
enough offensive line talent to justify that level of pass catching talent. And so even if they're not going to be great, and even if we're going to see some swoons from Daniel Jones over the course of the year, I kind of am buying the supporting cast enough that I think they can be a definitively good offense over the course of the entire season.
I will agree with you in that people underestimated how good their receivers were. And when I was doing my playmaker rankings before the season, I kept wanting to put them higher and higher because I kept seeing reasons for, well, they had, and I don't want to dwell on this, the least accurate quarterback in modern NFL history, the highest off-target rate. Once you got rid of the off-target throws, they were playing really well. But and I don't put the off-target throws obviously on the receivers running the wrong routes. If it's once or twice, maybe it's the wrong route. If it's every single week, 5 times a game with the same quarterback, it's probably on the quarterback. And so I can certainly see the argument there. The concern for me is just you mentioned how the pass pro has improved, but that's been in either a super positive game script or a neutrals game script. That has been when they have been in situations where they've had the threat of the run, even if they're not going to be running a ton, which I think they've run a fair amount, but they have not needed to be in drop back passing situations. We are down 10 points, we're down 14 points. We have to throw to catch up. We're in third and long. And you can sustain a season without that for the vast majority of the time. Look at the Broncos last year with Bo Nix, right? Like that was an offense where they were playing basically hide the quarterback on third and long in a drop back passing situations. When they got against the Ravens or the Bills, it was a disaster because those were good teams and they were playing from ahead, and the Broncos had to catch up. Do I think Daniel Jones can thrive to that level? Sure, but that's the 16th best quarterback in football, or the 16th best offense in football. The
But the
the
Broncos
problem
had
for me,
Cortland Sutton and like nothing else. This is a
yeah,
very different situation with the
mhm.
talent that we're talking about among this group.
They had a much better offensive line than I think the Colts offensive line is,
I
though.
think it was very good. I still think the Colts offensive line clears a certain bar where
Sure.
maybe they're not the number one pass protection group in the NFL this year, but I
Are
think they could be
you
the eighth best.
are you surprised they've lost Ryan Kelly and Will Fries and haven't really skipped a beat?
I am a little bit, but the comparison I would make, remember last year when we were all freaking out about the Ravens, where the Ravens
Yeah.
were going to have multiple new stars along the offensive
Mhm.
line, and we were all like, oh my God, how's this going to go? And they had a historically good offense over the course of the year.
Sure,
There are
sure.
some teams that I think have done a very, very good job of creating like an offensive line ecosystem in their building where they've
Mhm,
been able to sustain attrition, turnover,
mhm.
guys getting hurt. And I do think the Colts with Tony Sparano Jr. and with that staff, I think they've kind of gotten to a place where you should trust them a little bit with the offensive line. Like since Steichen got there, after that nightmarish Frank Reich year with Matt
Yeah.
Ryan, the offensive
Mhm,
line has once again definitively been a strength of this team. And
mhm,
so they kind of earn the benefit of the doubt to me. So I'm not necessarily that shocked because of
mhm.
the recent history that we've gotten with this team.
Yeah, I mean, Bernard Raymond coming through, I know for a guy who was a project coming into the league was a mess that first year, with Matt Ryan, and that final year at Frank Reich has been obviously a very good left tackle. This is also a defense argument for me, though, because the Colts defense, you tell me if you think this is sustainable, Robert Mays. The Colts are last in the NFL in pressure rate and have the best QBR of any pass defense in football.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you
probably not
think they're
sustainable. Latu
do
didn't
you
play
think they're
last
gonna be
week,
able to
though.
keep that up? Oh,
No,
so
I
you think
don't.
you think Latu is apparently, Micah Parsons to
I'm
2.0.
grasping at the straws here. That probably will not happen, but I do think that the offense there I have
Mhm.
reasons for like real definitive optimism. There's
Sure.
one sequence in the second half that I just wanted to talk about that to me like really
Mhm.
speaks to this. I believed this coming into the season to an extent, and I think you've seen it on full display this year. I think that beyond the depth of the talent with the pass catchers, the skill sets fit together like a puzzle.
Mhm.
It's perfect. Like what they're bringing to the table. You have
Mhm.
Pierce as this like vertical outside the numbers player where you can just chuck it up to him and he makes plays. He's done each of the last 2 weeks.
Mhm.
You have Michael Pittman. We know what he is. He's like a slasher over the middle of the field. He's like like a
Yep.
mid-range jump shooter in like basketball context, right? Like he's very
Mhm.
good in that area of the field. You have AD Mitchell, who again I think is just a phenomenal, like outside the numbers, like break you off sort of player. It's a very
Mhm.
simple skill set, but when they have to tap into those one-on-ones, he can do it. And then you have Josh Downs, who we'll talk about in a second. To me, he's like one of the most dynamic receivers in the league when you put him in the slot. He's an incredible football player.
Mhm.
And oh yeah, Tyler Warren now fills in all the gaps that would have
Mhm.
previously existed with this group. And so you have this, everybody talks about this, where they want their receiving core to be a basketball team with all these different sizes and
Mhm.
skills and everything else. It's exactly what the Colts are doing. There was a 2-play sequence at the end of the first half in that game where on a 3rd and 3, they do a
Mhm.
little whip return with Downs coming in motion where he just puts the corner in an absolute blender. I think it was Riley
Mhm.
Moss. They hit him in the flat, first down. On the next play, they hit Alec Pierce on like a 45-yard, 50-yard chuck down the right sideline. Like it
Mhm.
just, you see it. You see the vision, how it's all supposed to come together. And so, do I think they'll be the best offense in the league? No. Do I think they could be the 8th best offense in the league? I kind of do. I know that sounds like maybe crazy, and I may regret this very quickly, but I kind of believe in what's happening here.
Do you believe enough in Daniel Jones for that to happen? Because
Absolutely not.
I could see the playmaker argument. I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt on the offensive line. I'm willing to believe that Jonathan Taylor could be a top 5 back. I think he is. I just don't know that I trust that guy to be the guy we've seen. Even the guy last week, who was not the guy against the Dolphins, who was on an insane heat check. I don't trust him to be that guy for 17 games. Maybe I'm just scarred. Maybe I'm an unreliable narrator, to quote someone else in the show. But I have to see it for more than 2 weeks before I believe it.
Yeah, I absolutely do not believe in Daniel Jones, but I'm choosing to believe in everything else and that everything else might lift him enough where this can be a good offense over the course of the year. I may regret this very quickly, but I'm saying yes to this one to an extent.
If you were saying average, 16th, I'm with you. If you were saying 12th, I mean, I wouldn't be with you, but I can at least see the case. You're saying 8th? I'm sorry, I can't.
Back half of the top 10, I'm willing to believe it. Let's get to the next one
Okay.
here. The Green Bay Packers are number 1 in offensive and defensive DVOA through the first 2 games of the season. They look incredible. Is this real? Are the Packers the best team in the NFL, full stop?
Not only would I say yes, I find it hard to formulate an argument against it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's
what
tough right now.
what case would you make for the Packers not being considered the best team in football through 2 weeks?
I really don't know. I mean,
That
maybe moving forward, you're a little bit concerned about like the Jaden Reed injury. Zach Tom's banged up. Does the offense maybe fall back to earth a little bit? Like, I think that's probably where I would go with it, but I don't think
Mhm.
it's an argument I believe.
Yeah, but, like, at the same time, they played last week without Aaron Banks and Zach Tom. They had Jaden Reed got hurt in the first quarter of that game, if I'm not mistaken, got hurt early on. Um, don't have Christian Watson. You can make the case, hey, that's gonna hurt them moving forward if they don't have those guys, but Reed's out for a while, but Tom's coming back, Banks is coming back. They were dominant without those guys.
Yeah.
They didn't skip a beat without any of those guys. And on top of that, they've done this against one of the toughest schedules in football, 2 very good teams to start the year by the vast majority of projections. I know I'm not as high on the Commanders as anybody else, but I still think they're a good team. The Lions look great, sorry, against the Bears the week later.
Oh, we'll get there.
We will. I just very little reason for me to think that this offense is suddenly not going to figure things out or suddenly collapsed earth. If anything, you'd expect Josh Jacobs to be a little more explosive. Haven't had too many big plays in the run game, which we know Josh Jacobs can do. They've had plays that that Jaden Reed corner for a touchdown got called back last week. That could have been, they have more big plays and they know what to do it in a strange way. We've seen Jordan Love be this guy, if not in the first half of the year, for extended periods of time. And then you flip it, the biggest concern for this team on paper was the cornerback room. And it turns out they added the best possible piece to make their cornerbacks' lives easier. And not only doing that, it's also seemingly made the other players up front better as well. I mean, since Micah Parsons showed up, Lucas Van Ness looks like he's all-pro, hybrid pass rusher. It's been incredible to see how quickly even a Micah Parsons who's not playing every snap has really just taken that defense to the next level. I can't see an argument beyond just, oh, they're the Packers and they'll fall back to earth. Like in terms of what they're actually doing on a play-by-play basis, I don't see anything that isn't sustainable or isn't backed up by what you're actually seeing on film.
Yeah, I really like a lot of what you said, and I'm buying it too. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. Like I always
I did
thought that
too.
they had a gear that was not yet realized, and I feel like we're realizing that gear. And what you said about the offensive line, I think there are some things with this Packers team where I appreciate the way they've built the roster. I appreciate the way they go about building the roster. But every once in a while, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit, and I'm like, okay, guys. And part of it is the flexibility that they're seeking
Sure.
out with some of these players positionally and what
Mhm.
it gives you in terms of depth and just answers to certain problems that are going to occur. And part of me is like, do we really need all the offensive linemen to play three positions? Do we really need all the DBs to be able to play every single position? And you're seeing right now the vision with some of that stuff starting to come
Mhm.
together. You mentioned Aaron Banks and Zach Tom not playing in that
Yeah.
game. Well, Jordan Moore, the two guys they had step in for those players, they had a they had a left guard who was a former first round pick last
Mhm.
year, and then the right tackle that they had in Anthony Belton was a second round pick this year.
Yep.
Like that is the depth of this roster, is that they can go to those guys when their starters
Mhm.
get hurt. And so I think that is the argument for how they've built the offense. Jordan Love, the one area last year was really tough. Man coverage, third down, volatile
Yep.
situations. They've been
Mhm.
phenomenal against man coverage this year while seeing it at still a 50% clip. Based on
Mhm.
what they did last year, you'd expect teams to try to challenge them in that way, and they've answered the bell throughout the first two games when teams have tried to do
Mhm.
that. On defense, I think what you're saying is perfect because the Micah Parsons thing slots everyone into different roles. Now Rashawn Gary becomes your number two pass rusher, and
Yep.
now Lucas Van Ness can just kind of be like a big athlete, and that's
Yep.
what Lucas Van Ness is. And the other
Mhm.
thing it does, it also, because you have those two guys that are credible edge rushers, you can bump Micah Parsons inside. You can
Mhm.
just play all these guys in all these different positions in the way that they want to, but now it's an actual realized idea instead of
Mhm.
just this theory about how we want to play. And I'll say this about the defensive back room. I wasn't worried about it coming into the year. Like I felt like last year, those guys acquitted themselves just fine. And
Sure.
so they go out and get Nate Hobbs in free agency. He doesn't even play.
Yep.
He's like a spot player right now
Mhm.
because they feel so good about Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine.
Mhm.
Nixon was incredible on Thursday night. And he's
Mhm.
another guy where he's 28, but this is only his second season as a full-time outside
Mhm.
corner. And so to see his progress and what Valentine brings them, I think he's an underrated player. Like what Evan Williams and Bullard and McKinney and just like the depth that they have at those safety spots. And then what they're doing at linebacker, like Quay
You haven't
Walker
e
and Edgerrin
you
Cooper
haven't
are
even
real
mentioned Edgerrin Cooper,
players.
he's not a real player. He's a freak. He is one of the most exciting players to watch in football, full stop, Edgerrin Cooper. In terms of a week-to-week basis, what you are going to see from him, what you are going to see him do, even attempt, just an absolute phenom of a football player. And that really, even last year, when he was playing on a part-time basis and then got more run the second half of the year, that began to make that defense better. That defense in the
Yeah.
first half of the year, more turnover driven. Like they were, they had some hot stretches of takeaways, which isn't always going to happen. And they couldn't rely on that happening this year, but their underlying level of play was significantly better with Edgerrin Cooper on the field. And he looks like a superstar linebacker, like not just a breakthrough guy. He is already at that level to me.
And Quay Walker was really coming along in the back half of last
I
season
agree.
as well, after coming back
I
from
agree.
injury. And I think Brian Kunkun said before the season, the only reason they didn't pick up his fifth-year option is just that it doesn't financially make sense because they're
Mhm.
outside linebackers in
Yep.
that number. And so, but they're already talking to him about an extension. He's playing very, very well.
Mhm.
One of the things that really stuck out to me when I was there at training camp, it was my second to last stop, I want to say. And talking to somebody on their defensive staff, we were talking about DeMarcus Covington, who's their defensive line coach, and just
Mhm.
they changed out defensive line coaches after last year because they felt like that group, even with all the investments, underperformed. And something that they said Covington was bringing to the table is he's just very, very smart when it comes to devising offensive line games or defensive line games and stunts.
Mhm.
And watching that game against Washington, that's what really stuck out to me. It was how dynamic the pass rush feels. It's not just
Mhm.
about dropping Micah Parsons in there. It's about having like real defined plans for how you're going to create these matchups for everybody. And the other little detail of it, the other little wrinkle, I thought they did a phenomenal job of accounting for Jaden Daniels as a scrambler
Mhm.
because on all of these stunts, one time it was Colby Wooden, one time it was Devontae Wyatt, where you have a lot of the stunts were inside between the tackles. And so they're with the three interior guys. Sometimes
Mhm.
that's Parsons, sometimes it's a linebacker, whatever. And by doing that, you're creating a little window of space in essentially the B gap immediately at the start of a passing play, and Jaden thinks he has a little bit of a window to run, and then immediately one of those guys is appearing in that window. They did such a great job of taking those rush lanes away while not defanging the aggressiveness of the pass rush. And that is the best example so far to me of the fact that's an extension of what we saw last year. Jeff Hafley's fucking good at this. Like, he is a very good defensive coordinator, and now he's got horses. And so it's really hard for me not to be excited about what we've watched over the first couple weeks.
Yeah, I'll extend it even further. You look at how the cornerbacks played in that game against Daniels. It's one thing to tell people, tell your cornerbacks, like your cloud corners or your guys playing in the flat, have eyes on Jaden Daniels. It's another for them to actually do it routinely, snap after snap after snap, and then tackle Jaden Daniels. And they were able to do that. It felt like the entire defense, whether that's because the Commanders don't have people who scare you, which is a different Commanders conversation, but like when they were in zone, they did such a good job of slowing down Jaden Daniels. And then in man, he was 3 of 11 for 26 yards. Like, if you can get away with playing both kinds of coverage because you have a freakish pass rush and you have a great defensive line guy, coach, just scheming stuff up, it just goes a long way. And I mean, like, you can make the case, okay, haven't faced I guess the Commanders were a really good run team in week 1. Maybe they haven't faced the sort of a rushing. The Lions are also a really good run team too. Like, the run defense would have been a concern for me heading into the year. That has not been the case. Maybe it's just Jordan Love's going to turn the ball over 3 times, 1 game a month, and that's just the reality of Jordan Love. If that's the case, okay. But that's true for so many elite teams in the NFL. Like, if that's the only thing holding them back, I'm not concerned about that.
You're not buying what Jerry Jones is saying, that Kenny Clark is the greatest run defender of all time? This is going to be a problem for the Packers?
I mean, T.J. Slaton was number 1 in run stop win rate last year.
He actually is a very good run defender. They did trade, but again, I think that's the depth we're talking about. The Colby Woodens of the world, Devontae Wyatt, all that stuff.
The other thing, I'll throw one more thing out there. This team was 3rd in DVOA last year. It's not like this is a team that was 10th or 12th making the league. They were already really good. And now they added Micah Parsons to the youngest roster in football. They are a really good football team.
All right, let's do this. Through 2 games, the Chicago Bears are dead last in defensive DVOA. They look like a disaster in several different ways through the first 2 games of the Ben Johnson regime. Is this real? Are the Bears a lost cause?
We're in week 3. It's been 2 weeks, Maze. Here's the thing. Why are you asking me? I feel like if there's
I'll answer the question in a second. You're the guest. This is the mechanics of how the conversation works.
Thank you for explaining conversations. Nobody cares what I think about the Chicago Bears. Everybody listening to this wants to know if you believe the Chicago Bears are finished after 2 weeks.
It's really funny that people just thought I was trying to get out of the show on Sunday night because I didn't want to talk about the Bears. One, it's like I was dealing with a very real medical thing, was a member of my family. So I appreciate everyone that handled that, by the way. Truly, every note, I haven't talked about it on the podcast yet. Everyone's fine. Everything's great. We're back to normal. But I just thank you for everyone who reached out, and thank you to Beller and Dave and Derek for picking up the slack. But I did not skip the show because the Bears played poorly. Do you know how many poor Bears games there have been in the 15 years I've been an NFL podcaster? If I bowed out of the show every time the Bears played I wouldn't record half the shows. So don't worry about that side of it. I was on Diana's show earlier today. I was on Scoop City with her and James, and they asked me, are you panicking yet? And I said no. I am not panicking yet. Am I concerned? Yes, I'm concerned. There's that Mulaney bit where he gets a subpoena for his emails for his landlord in college, and he gets a note from his friend and says, "You should be concerned." That is how I'm feeling right now. I am concerned.
Sure.
There are elements of this that are worrying. This defense is not a unit that should rank dead last in anything, considering the resources that you have pumped into it, the free agent money that you've spent on it, all that kind of stuff. I will say this. I've used this example a couple different times of the defense specifically. This may be cope. I'm just throwing it out there. 2 years ago, Vance Joseph, former NFL head coach, I think an objectively good defensive coordinator in the NFL. In week 3 of the 2023 season, the Denver Broncos gave up 73 points to the Miami Dolphins. 70 points. How much was it? I think it was like 72. 73 is the record. They gave up 70 points in an NFL game. That's the point, okay? They gave up 70 points in an NFL game. They were not some disaster. They played poorly the week after against the Bears. In the back half of the season, defense locked down. By year 2, they were one of the best defenses in the league. So the 2 weeks into the year, there's so much volatility to this that I don't necessarily think we should be searching for the nearest high thing, okay? I think that there are elements of the defense that are concerning. I think that Tremaine Edmonds continues to play in a worrying way to me. The way they defended perimeter runs in that game was an extreme concern. I think some of the things that they were doing from a pass rush perspective with some of the simulated pressures and all of that, combined with the fact that they were seeing play action half of the dropbacks, which on those play action snaps, they were playing the run the entire way. They're getting absolutely no pressure. Like, I think there are certain aspects of the defense that will get better. And so I don't think they're going to be an objectively bad defense all year, even without Jalen Johnson. So that part of it, I think that there are better days ahead. We can talk about the offense in a second, but the defense has actually been the worst part of this through 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions looked lost in week 1 and looked like the best version of the 2024 Lions in week 2. And the tough part for me is sort of evaluating what's likely to improve, because now at some point you're going to get Kyler Gordon back, and Kyler Gordon's a good football player. That's going to make your life easier. But now you're also losing Jalen Johnson, who's out indefinitely with a groin injury.
Probably for this season.
You think for the entire season? Oh, wow.
It sounds like it. It sounds like there's like a chance he misses the entire season.
I mean, that's traumatic. Like, teams have been picking on Tyreek Stevenson for almost a full year now with a lot of success. And I think there's an element
That's the problem, is he's not going to stop playing. Tyreek Stevenson's going to be a part of this even with Jalen Johnson hurt.
Right. That's I think the point I'm getting to, is that you can't really play whack-a-mole with the problems when more problems are popping up. I do think the pass rush is going to be better. I think there's enough pieces there. I feel like this is my opinion on Montez Sweat stays the same, but everyone else's opinion changes dramatically. Like, I think he's a good, maybe even very good at times, edge rusher, and he is alternately like the biggest disappointment in NFL history or the best 2A edge rusher at the week after the trade in Bears history. He's not either of those guys. He's fine. I think Dayo Odeyingbo is fine. I think there's German Dexter, I think, is an underrated player. But I do think they have the ability to get pressure with Ford. And if you have that, then I think you have the ability to get better. I think that's
they
sort of
should
like
have the ability to get pressure with Ford. They have not done that yet.
I think they will. I think they will, is what I'm saying.
Again, I think if you go back and you watch that, just how many play action dropbacks we're seeing with a ton of guys in protection, that's what I think that leads to some of the pressure numbers that you're seeing. And I also think that Montez Sweat specifically, there were only like 10 or so non-play action dropbacks in that game. He's dropping into coverage on one of them. He's for some reason trying to get a hand on Jahmyr Gibbs in the flat on another one. It's like, Dennis, I know what you're trying to do here. Let's just like rush 4 or 5 and like play man on third down. Like, let's just make it a little bit simpler here. And so again, I think this is a new defensive coordinator feeling out a new unit. We see this all the time.
That's my point, is that I think that process improves as you sort of figure out, okay, what can we actually do on game days? What can we actually pull off? Where's this defense at, especially post Jalen Johnson? Like, what can we do in the back end that we feel good about coverage-wise? And I think that process takes some time. But at the same time, like, this defense looked phenomenal for half of football, maybe even 3/4 of football in week 1. Like, it's not as if they've been. I was looking at the 2007 Giants and how bad they were the first 2 games of the year. They allowed 80 points through the first 2 games of the year. It's not like they've been horrific for the entirety of the first 2 weeks of the season. And so I do think there's a game script element to this. Like, I don't know that they're going to be a great run defense. And so if they are trailing and they're playing a team that is a terrifying run and play action team, they're not going to be in great shape. That is not going to be the strength of this team. But I think if they can play from ahead, I think they're going to be okay. The problem, maybe going to the offensive side, is that they've not been able to get ahead.
I will say about Tyreek Stevenson before we move to the offense, there are moments where it's been rough over the first couple weeks. The first play, like the first chunk play to Amon-Ra St. Brown on the first drive, Amon-Ra St. Brown is an incredible football player.
Yeah.
Like, what he did in that game on Sunday, there's nobody else in the league at receiver that can do what he did. If you watch the plays specifically, he had a first down on a run from the shotgun on 3rd and 5. He blocked 2 guys on the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown run on the first drive. And just the way he moves, he's a one-on-one type of player in how the Lions use him. And that was like a symphony that he put on Sunday. Another big play against Tyreek Stevenson. This to me was like the game completely personified. So there was a sack by Montez Sweat when the game was 7-7 that gets wiped off by a very ticky-tack illegal contact penalty. On the
Mhm.
next on that drive, I think it was the next play, they had a chunk to Amon-Ra St. Brown with Stevenson bailing out into like a funky cover 2 look and Grady Jarrett dropping, and there was no one in the middle of the field. It's like, that's the type of shit where I'm like, guys, we are overthinking this stuff. Like, I get wanting to make things hard on the quarterback. We are overthinking this stuff.
You think about how excited you would be if but the Grady Jarrett robber interception of Jared Goff, though.
No. It's not the cost. The cost benefit analysis there is not in your favor. The offense right now, I leave that game on Sunday far less worried than I was after week 1.
I
The
agree.
offensive issues to me are much more about overall sloppiness
Mhm.
than they are about something endemic about the offense overall or even the quarterback. The downs
Mhm.
and distances they were facing in that game, the interception that Caleb throws, it's an unacceptable decision, right? It's an
No,
unacceptable decision. But it's
he
second
had
and
he had 3 or
32.
4 truly horrific throws in that game, but that doesn't mean the other 25 or 30 throws were all terrible.
Some really tough choices, including that interception. That ball's just got to go out of bounds. But he's trying to make a play on second and 32.
Sure.
Down to down, I thought he had some of his best moments as a professional
Mhm.
football player on Sunday.
Mhm.
Some of those in-breakers against
Yep.
zone coverage that he's just ripping on time. Some of the intermediate outbreakers that he's throwing to Roma Dunze on time. I was really encouraged by the way that he played. And I
Mhm.
know the running game, the stats don't look very good. I actually thought the run game on Sunday on non-zone runs, the
Mhm.
line and the structure of them was fine. The back is bad, right? Like that day
Yeah.
one DeAndre Swift contract from 2 years ago is still one of the more inexplicable and unacceptable choices that's ever been made in free agency over the last 5 years. You and I, when we were doing free agent pods in like 2013, every single
Mhm.
contract that came across was like, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. That happens way less now.
I
The
agree.
DeAndre Swift is the exception to that. And so I think the offensive line needs to play better. Braxton
Mhm.
Jones, as he gets healthier, I think we'll see that sort of improve. But I do think that we are not veering into disaster territory just yet on either side of the ball after going back and rewatching that game.
I agree. And not only do you should listen to me because I'm an idiot, but people who are a lot smarter than me agree. I think Ted Wynn has come out and said a similar thing. JT O'Sullivan has come out and said similar things. Our friend Nate Tice has come out and said similar things. There's been generally people going back and watching that tape, myself included, have found a guy who was getting through his second and third read, who was,
Moving through progressions at a really nice clip. Really
yes, and
nice.
yes, and not like doing it in a mechanical fashion, like in a organic, I'm actually operating like a quarterback. I'm not just bailing after my first read isn't there kind of way. And that's all great. That's what you need to do. That's not something that I think is going to disappear after a week. I do think that is what's being drilled in on a practice level, and being drilled in is like that's what we have to do to survive. We cannot not do that and survive. I don't know that I can get on board with you when it comes to the run game. So they have a 33% success rate on design runs, which is 30th in the NFL. And to me, that is, if you want to pin that entirely on DeAndre Swift, I'm not going to be opposed, but I do think that is the thing that underpins a lot of these problems. Because you're right, they are in second and long and third and long way too often for this offense to survive. We just saw how bad the Lions offense was with much better players to me and a much better offensive line in week 1 when they couldn't run the football. We saw JJ McCarthy get significantly better in week 1 the moment the Vikings started to have more success running the football in the second half of that game. I don't think this offense works without a good running game. And if you want to put the blame on that on DeAndre Swift and to a lesser extent on Ben Johnson, I think that's fine. But I don't think anything changes until that run game is passable. Doesn't have to be great, but at least has to be vaguely threatening and more consistent than it's been through 2 weeks.
I don't disagree with that. I will say, I think that some of the zone runs have been issues. The Jonah Jackson, I think, it was a hold or a TFL that he gave up on a zone run earlier in that game on
Mhm.
Sunday. On the gap scheme runs, there is space. Like, I do think that there are brighter days ahead for those numbers with the run game. I think I'd
Mhm.
like to see somebody that's not DeAndre Swift running the ball. That was the case coming into
That's
the
the
season. And the
problem.
fact that they did not address it, to me, it is one of the more worrying parts of how they handled the offseason. But I
Mhm.
do think structurally, it is not as bad and definitely was not as bad on Sunday as some of those numbers would lead you to believe. That's where I
Mhm.
land with it.
Yeah. But if you're saying, okay, leaning to more gap scheme runs, That's not DeAndre Swift to me. That is not where you're
That's
going
what
to
I'm
get
saying. Like,
the best
just
use out
give
of
me
your
more
running back.
Monangai. Like, I don't care at this point. I would like to see
I
someone
mean,
else run the football.
For best ball purposes, I would love Kyle Monangai to be the lead back for the Bears. I don't know if Caleb Williams, pass protection, would love Kyle Monangai, lead running back for the Chicago Bears. To be fair, DeAndre Swift has been horrific in pass protection as well.
I was going to say, I don't think you're getting much worse than what they're getting right now. Let's get to the next one here.
Yeah.
The Kansas City Chiefs are 0-2. Okay? We've done this a million times, it feels like, over the last 4 or 5 years. Not 0-2, but I think we've had the, like, is it time to worry about the Chiefs thing so many times over the last 4 or 5 years. And every single time it's like, I guess not. They'll be fine. Is this real? Is it really time to actually worry about what the Kansas City Chiefs look like 2 games into this season?
For now, yes. For the next few weeks, yes. To me, I mean, like, again, if you're the Chiefs, if you're Andy Reid and you're sitting here building a game plan for week 3, what's the thing you believe in?
Nothing.
What
That's
is
the problem.
What is the element of this offense you can go back onto and say, this is the thing I know we can do? Because we saw
scramble.
That was it. The first half of the game was just spam Pat scrambles. Anytime Pat gets man and someone takes a bad rush, we are out. I don't think he was even looking at his first read. I think he was just out the first chance he got. And you can't build an offense around that. You can't build an entire offense around Patrick Mahomes scrambles. And the problem for me is, okay, well, the design run game has been terrible. They're 24th in EPA on design runs.
27th in rushing success rate on running back runs right now.
27th in rushing success rate. They're not hitting a ton of explosives, more than they have the last couple of years, but they're hitting.
It's not hard to do.
It's been 3. I think it's been a couple of deep type 130, which is, great. Like, you need that to factor in. But this is an offense that the last 3 years has been, I think, first or second in third down conversion rate. I think right alongside the Bills. And they've been significantly better by EPA on third down than they are on first and second down, which makes some sense. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's going to create some stuff out of nothing. I don't think they're just not bothering to care until third down, but I think there's an element of, like, they are a team that historically does not seem to really put pen to paper until it's deadline time. Not that I know anything about that or what that would be like, but they're 26th in third down conversion rate this year. And it is a small sample. It's only 2 games, maybe, 4 or 5 third down conversions changes them from being bad to good. But there's no reason to think they're going to be good on third down. What is the playmaker, the player who's going to make them good on
it's supposed to be Kelsey, right? And I think that, I think you had a couple, like, Kelsey Mahomes mind meld moments in the passing game on Sunday that was really all they could turn to. And I just think those are happening much less frequently than they used to happen. And the explosiveness we knew was going to be a problem without those receivers. But even when they weren't explosive over the last couple of years, they were at least consistent and efficient for the most part on offense. They were 11th in rushing success rate last year. They're 27th right now. On non-scramble so far this season, where do you think Mahomes ranks in success rate?
Not high.
5th from the bottom.
Oof.
Here are the guys with a worse passing success rate than Patrick Mahomes on non-scrambles this year. Cam Ward, JJ McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers, and Jaden Daniels, who just played against that group of Banshees that we were talking about in Green Bay. Those are the 4 guys. That's it. So they have not just not been explosive. They haven't done anything well. It's been really, really hard to watch. And even things they used to not be able to do to this team, right? Like, we can't blitz Mahomes. Can't blitz Mahomes. Dead last in drop back success rate against the blitz through 2 games. Dead last. And maybe that's a little bit of a curveball that Fangio's throwing at you, but it's still, like you said at the top, there's nothing they can turn to right now. It's weird to watch.
Yeah, I mean, so what they did post Tyreek Hill trade is lean into 12 personnel, lean into 13 personnel, get more tight ends on the field, dictate defensive matchups, create opportunities for Kelsey to be up against linebackers or isolated against players they wanted to exploit, and help out the run game. They have a 35% success rate with 12 personnel this year. They're at 48% out of 11 personnel. And it's not like they have great wide receivers on the field right now. So when we first started this conversation, I came out and said, for now, because I do think ideally Rashee Rice is going to make things better. I do think whatever version of Xavier Worthy they get back is going to make things better. But we haven't even talked about the defense. And Steve Spagnuolo is blitzing at the third highest rate in football. I
He needs to.
believe he needs to, number one. And number two, I think they're 23rd in pressure rate on those blitzes. Like that combination for any team, the Chiefs are not an exception here. If you're blitzing that often and you are failing on blitzes that often, you're hopeless. There is no chance of you succeeding on defense if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I think last year they were able to be a bad defense and still be okay because the offense could control games,
Yes.
right? The offense was capable of maintaining possession, shortening the games, bleeding games out, and that's why they were able to win ugly. Like we just alluded to, they're incapable of controlling the ball. They were ninth in offensive success rate last year, even with all the issues that we talked about
Yeah.
all season. They are not there right now. They're 27th in rushing, and Pat Mahomes has on non-scrambles the fifth worst dropback success rate in the league right now. So they are not maintaining possession in the way that they did last year. And the other part of this that worries me is that when I watched that game on Sunday, I rewatched it this morning,
Mhm.
they got punked in
Yeah.
terms of the physicality from
Yeah.
the Eagles defense the entire game. It started the first play or the first drive when Cooper DeJean just dumps Hollywood Brown coming off the line of scrimmage. And that happened all game. Whether it was Makuba, there was a 2-play stretch when the Chiefs were driving. For some reason, I can't find it in my notes right now, but there was a 2-play stretch where Jalen Hunt specifically dumps Jawan Taylor back into the backfield as part of a TFL and then roasts him for a pressure and gets a holding call on the very next play. And that's the issue here is just that those things that should be things you can rely on where you're paying a guy a ton of money to be your right tackle, you can't rely on that. You can't rely on the run game. Noah Gray's getting pushed around in the run game. So even if you're trying to go into those bigger sets and be more physical, you're not able to tap into that. It just everything they want to try to do or that they might have been able to do in the past doesn't seem like a viable avenue for them right now. And I think part of that is just this is not a physical team. On both sides of the ball, it's not a physical team. And I think you're feeling that. If you're not going to be explosive, you better be physical.
Yes. You need one or the other. And it's tough because to me, and I talked about this a little bit on Twitter with Stephen Ruiz and Jeff Schwartz, is the one thing we've always wanted to see from the Chiefs and Andy Reid, especially when they had such a great interior offensive line, which I think it's still fine, even though I think Sumatai obviously is a downgrade on Joe Tooney, but design run game, under center design run game, gap runs, stuff that's not just, shotgun zone stuff and not RPOs, like getting into that more often. I don't know if they'd be good at that at this point. I don't know if that would even work. If that play action offense off of that would work. I don't know if you can install as much of that stuff as you might like overnight. I just it doesn't feel like there's any of those things we talked about. It's like we can't rely on that. You can't rely on that. I don't see why any of those things would get better beyond playing worse teams. And maybe they'll have some games against bad teams. I don't know who they're playing this week, so there wouldn't be any reason to think that they're suddenly going to turn things around. But it's just they don't seem on the level with Chiefs teams from years past, let alone the best teams in football right now.
Also, people are going to say, Mahomes hasn't played well either. You think about some of those misses, and he absolutely did miss Tyquan Thornton on that throw. He missed Noah Gray on a corner route early in the game. The problem is you feel those so much more because the margins are so much thinner. You have no margin for error based on how the offense is playing right now. And it's funny. It reminds me of just like what it was been like to watch Bears offenses in the past where like any opportunity you have down the field, if it doesn't connect, you're like, well, it's over. That was it. That was like the one shot that they had in this game to hit an explosive play. And when it doesn't happen, you feel it so deeply. And that's what the Chiefs are right now.
Yeah. Do you if you had to guess where Patrick Mahomes is in QBR through 2 weeks?
Well, the scrambles throw that out of whack. I mean, probably like 25th.
He's 4th in QBR through 2 weeks.
Oh my God, that's insane.
I'm not saying.
I don't know how QBR works. I don't know how much it weighs.
I work for ESPN. QBR is obviously something we're a fan of, but put it this way. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is the problem. I don't think you're saying he is the problem, but
people are going to be screaming at their computers or their phones is what I'm saying. It's like, oh, he's missing all these throws, whatever. Like he missed a couple, but like you feel them so much more deeply because of how this is going.
You're right. We don't have to believe that, though, to be clear. I want to make sure that is not the official stance of Robert Mays, William Barnwell Enterprises about Patrick Mahomes.
Next one here, Barnwell. On Sunday, the Atlanta Falcons had a 53.3% pressure rate against the Minnesota Vikings.
Woof.
That is their second best pressure rate game of the next gen era, which goes back to 2016. Okay. The Atlanta Falcons have like a top 5 defense by DVOA through the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Is the Atlanta Falcons pass rush real?
It's better. I mean, it is not the worst pass rush in football on a regular basis the way it's been in years past. I'm skeptical it's this good. I'm skeptical
They're
they're going to
second in
be
defensive
as
DVOA, by the way.
effective.
Jesus Christ, they're
Oh my
second.
God.
If only the Packers are ahead of them. Sorry.
You know, when you watch the Falcons, you think this is right up there with the Micah Parsons Packers as just stifling opposing teams. They're better, and they should be better, right? I mean, you use 2 first-round picks on edge rushers. There was a stat I found at the end of the offseason, and I was mad. I found it from Mina's show, and I was mad I didn't find it earlier. So we just talked about QBR in the prior segment, and I recognize that maybe there were some people who did not love what QBR found about that Patrick Mahomes. But last year, the Falcons had a 96.7 QBR when they blitzed. That is not just the worst rate in football.
Crazy.
It is the worst rate of the QBR era, which goes back to 2007. That was always going to get better, whether they added 2 first-round pass rushers or not. This year, they are 7th. They have a 35.3 QBR with the blitz. So their blitzing is better. And they're not blitzing a ton, but when they blitz, it is more successful. The part that I don't believe, the part that I find difficult to sustain is this. So they're 12th in pressure rate, which is fine. Like, I could buy them being the 12th best pressure rate in football. In terms of pressure to sack rate, so how often do you turn your pressures into sacks? They were 28th last year. They are 4th this year.
Yeah.
That is a major leap forward. And that is the part I think I find tough to sustain. Maybe they will keep it up. They've played 2 quarterbacks who frankly are pretty good at or at least Baker Mayfield's pretty good at avoiding sacks when he's under pressure, as the Texans found out on Sunday in a very key moment. But I just find it hard to believe that they will be able to keep this up in terms of how good they've been at getting home or finishing once they get home.
I think some of it is real in the sense that I really like what the pass rush plan has looked like from Jeff Ulbrich and that defensive staff over the first couple weeks.
Yep.
They have the bodies to make this interesting, okay? When you have Jalen Walker and you have Caden Ellis specifically, Walker, Ellis, Divine Diablo, they have linebackers who can blitz. And so I think that there's going to be some of that where we're going to be mugged up. We're going to do all these twists and games with these very light bodies. I mean, there was one pressure when it was Caden Ellis, Jalen Walker lined up in the A gap and the B gap. They run a little twist. Walker comes completely untouched. Like, that's what you want to see. Like, those 2 guys, you can weaponize them in the pass rush game.
And you mentioned Diablo. You saw week 1, he had 3 quick pressures in that game just by attacking the interior of the line, where it was Michael Jordan and Ben Bredesen, who, you know, you have a guy just coming in to play guard and the guy moving over to center. Like, that's where you should be attacking. So maybe you're not going to get the same results, but at least there's a logic behind this is what we are trying to do against the weakest part of that Bucs line.
You've got to unleash the linebackers as part of this, because I think that while the edge rushers are explosive, you don't see many one-on-one edge wins with this group so far. Like, even James Pierce's sack that he had in that game, that's a stunt where he's looping inside. Jalen Walker did have one against Justin School, right? So when you're not playing, and they were picking on, again, this is just good coaching. A lot of those stunts came on the left side where you have a rookie left guard, you have a backup left tackle for the Vikings. Let's pick on that as often as we can. They had 2 unblocked sacks in that game. You deserve some credit for that, right? Like, based on how you're lining up, based on the stressors you're putting on the offensive line, you're making them wrong in terms of how they're trying to pick some of this stuff up. So I will say I've been as impressed with the plan as I have been with the individual players. And if you can make sure, and the Vikings have struggled to run the ball so far this year pretty consistently, if you can make sure you're stopping the run on early downs, getting into some of these 2nd and 8s, 3rd and 7s, where you can unleash these sorts of plans, I do believe in the overall explosiveness of the group. But I do, like you've said a couple different times on this show, that's a lot of game script stuff. Like, you got to make sure you're putting yourself in the right situations in order to realize the best version of this group collectively.
One thing that does sort of seem telling to me, at least right now, is watching that 2-minute drill against the Bucs and what they chose to do against Baker. And that could be a schematic thing, that could be a week-to-week thing, but they were blitzing a lot on that final drive where they hit Mika Ibuka on Mills for a touchdown on the deep post. I don't doesn't mean you're going to blitz in every key situation, but I don't know that they trust their pass rush to get home with just the front four right now. I think they feel like they need those linebackers to make a difference, and they should. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wonder if they need to be able to rush with just their front four at some point, just to say, oh, we can do it. We're not just simming stuff up. We're not just relying solely on the linebackers to make this work.
I also think part of this is if you can rely on your secondary a little bit more to play man
That's
coverage.
the next thing I was going to bring up, which is that A.J. Terrell is now dealing with a hamstring injury, and that does impact things in terms of how much you trust your cornerbacks.
They played a shitload of man against the Vikings, and I think that if you have a group in the back end where you at least feel decent about their ability to hold up in those situations, and now I think based on the flashes you've seen from some of the young guys, like if Billy Bowman's going to play like this when he's playing man coverage, that allows you to be a little bit more aggressive with how you're attacking teams up front if you want to send a linebacker or two. So I think the back end will inform the front end and vice versa. And through the first couple of weeks, I actually think the returns have been pretty good. I think Ulbrich has done a very good job.
Yeah, I mean, the question is like, do you think they're going to be a solid pass rush? Which
I think solid is where I would put it. If the secondary can stay healthy and you can play that much man, I think solid is where I would put it because they have so many explosive bodies they can throw at the pop. Caden Ellis has always been this sort of player.
He's a really, really useful player.
I think there is a version of this team that can be like, I don't know, slightly above average. Like if you finish 12th in pressure rate, if you're the Falcons, I do believe in that sort of thing. I think, again, it's going to be dictated by how games go to an extent that it's not going to be totally situation agnostic. And I think that puts a little bit of a cap on it. Let's stick in that game from Sunday night for the next one here.
Oof.
The JJ McCarthy experience has been uneven through the first 2 weeks, to be generous, right? I will say this. So I did not watch that game live because, like we said earlier, I was dealing with something family-wise when that game was happening.
I was working, so I didn't watch it live as well. I watched it Monday morning.
So I watched it this morning, and is it crazy to say that I actually don't think he played that bad? Like I really don't think he played that bad. I think he played poorly.
Wasn't ideal.
He played poorly.
Yeah.
But this idea that he was unplayable, like this is like a total out and out disaster. We cannot put him back on the field. I don't get that reaction to it. Like, I truly don't think he played that bad to incite that response that I think some people were throwing out there after the game.
I mentioned this on my podcast this week. I feel insane because I saw JJ McCarthy in week 1. I know you were there live. I'm sorry. I watched from home. I thought he was kind of meh. Not great. I don't think everything that happened in that game was his fault. I don't think everything that succeeded was by him. I thought it was insane. He was NFC Player of the Week. People were furious. Got lots of really mad comments. Okay,
it's one of the dumbest things that's ever happened. It doesn't matter, but it's so dumb. Puka went 10 for 130 while bleeding from his face.
Truly, we could name 3/4 of the offensive players in the NFC, and we would be in the right side of history. But week 2, I watched him, and I'm like, well, a little worse. Like, didn't have that really hot stretch in the fourth quarter because I never got the run game going. And I kind of think he's still figuring things out. Not all that great. Needs a lot more help than maybe Viking fans would like. And now I feel like I'm defending him because people want him benched. They're like, oh, it looks like the ankle injury is now proof that he's being soft benched. By the way, soft benched Mays for Carson Wentz, who showed up a month ago. What are we? It's just 2 games into his career. What are we doing?
Yeah,
our brains are broken.
My thing about is this real was is it real that the Vikings made the wrong decision at quarterback? And so I think your response through 2 games is no, this is not real. Like, let's take a breath. That's kind of where I land as well.
How could we even know through 2 games? I mean, think about where Bo Nix was after 5 games last year.
Yeah,
he had a worse first down rate in the passing game than Deshaun Watson was having, where Deshaun Watson was actively ruining the Cleveland Browns. And Bo Nix, by the end of the year, I'm not the biggest Bo Nix fan by any means. He was fine. They were a playoff team with Bo Nix not leading the way, but not dragging them back with both arms either. He was fine. So I think if you were a Vikings fan and you thought JJ McCarthy was going to step in and be Kirk Cousins from 2 years ago, you were disappointed. That's fine. I don't think that should have been the expectation to begin with. I don't think we can say. And what I think we can say for sure is that saying they should have brought back Sam Darnold or that they made the wrong decision with that is so difficult because it's not JJ McCarthy versus Sam Darnold. It's JJ McCarthy and $30 million to spend elsewhere on your roster versus Sam Darnold. It's JJ McCarthy and Will Fries and Byron Murphy versus JJ McCarthy, Will Fries, and Byron Murphy versus Sam Darnold on a team that, by the way, Maze, they had 7, I believe, undrafted guys make their roster. That's not because they hit on the greatest undrafted free agent haul of all time. It's because they don't have a deep team, because the cap has been a mess for years, because Kwesi's first draft was a disaster. I mean, that is a team that needs to spread money around. And that's why I think they went into this broader idea if we have to get a young quarterback, because we have been basically just borrowing future cap money to pay Kirk Cousins, try to get that situation done. I think they had to reset and start over. And going back to Sam Darnold would have just put them back in the same Kirk Cousins cycle with maybe a slightly higher floor, trading it for no upside and a significant financial cost in the process.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like go back on it now. I supported the decision that they made for everything that you just said. Like this was always how it had to come together financially, and I don't think he's been bad enough over the first 2 weeks to like
Right.
start dismissing all of that and being like, oh no, that was a
Right.
mistake. Like if you go back and you watch the first half, like that drive where they get inside the 5 and it ends up they
Mhm.
end up having to kick a field goal. He's like ripping throws on that drive. The
Yes.
completion to Thielen on that deep out, the outbreaker to Naylor to get them inside the 5, and then they botch 2 plays and they have to kick a field goal.
Yeah.
Like, there's some
Go
misses.
back to week 1. He throws a pick 6 on the Jefferson throw, which, by the way, Jefferson came out after the game and said it was my fault, broke off my route too early. Later in that game, he rips a deep out on the other side of the field, which is a perfectly thrown pass. It's not like he can't make that throw. He made that throw later in the game.
Yeah, I also think that there are some structural issues here to talk about. The left tackle being a
Sure.
backup left tackle has been a consistent problem. And I think some of the things they're trying to do, they're helping out the left tackle so often that if you watch some of these play action concepts, they're not getting enough guys out into routes in
Yeah.
order to disrupt some of those second level defenders and open up some of those
Mhm.
windows. And so I understand trying to use more play action to make things easier on your young quarterback, but
Sure.
they're making it difficult on themselves because of what they have to do in protection. So that's one element of it. The other side of it is I think that teams have thrown a little bit of a curveball against them early in the season,
Mhm.
and I don't think that Kevin O'Connell has reacted well. Like, I feel like there have not been enough answers for how teams are playing against them. So last year, among quarterbacks who had at least 300 dropbacks, Jared
Mhm.
Goff was the only quarterback in the league who faced less cover 1 than Sam Darnold. It was 15.3% of dropbacks. So far through 2 games, 34% cover 1 man against the Vikings. They are challenging the quarterback. They're saying we are
Mhm.
not going to we're going to make you fit the ball into tight windows consistently. And I just don't
Mhm.
think based on the way the Vikings typically play, like stacks, bunches, motion, like they are very good when they know man coverage is coming and like man coverage
Mhm.
situations on like third down. But as teams have thrown a ton at them, I just don't think the game plans have been tailored to attack man coverage. It was the same problem they had against the Bears for the first 3 quarters. And so I just think that there's going to be a general settling of a lot of this stuff, and
Mhm.
the left tackle is going to be back soon. And so I'm just not at a point where I'm like, this was terrible. I can't believe they went with JJ McCarthy. The season is over. It's going to take a little bit longer before I get there.
Yeah, there's gonna be settling is the right word. Like I think this thing is going to shake out in a way where they're gonna find stuff that works in the run game, and I think that might just be as simple as just more Jordan Mason as opposed to Aaron Jones, who's now on IR with a hamstring injury. I think replacing a replacement level left tackle with a maybe in a good year Pro Bowl caliber left tackle
Oh,
in
I think
Christian
absolutely
Darrisaw.
Pro Bowl caliber. Yes.
Well, he's coming back from an injury, so like maybe that's the tough part to say.
I'll take him at 70%.
I've gotten into trouble with you throwing percents out there before. I don't want to do that again. It's a major upgrade for this team, no question. And its offensive line is still like the interior of that line, the thing that we were counting on getting better, have played 2 games together. I guess Will Fries and Ron Kelly have played together more often. Ryan Kelly's hurt now, but like Donovan Jackson's 2 games into his pro career, and that line has not had any reps together. So they're going to get better running the football, passing things off, running zone concepts as the year goes along. That's all going to improve. I just if your concern is that the JJ McCarthy is a limited quarterback who needs a lot of help around him to succeed, that's not unwarranted. But that's
We
something you
already
should have
knew
known based
that
on what you
though.
saw. Yeah, that's the thing. And so I think that they're still figuring out what their identity is going to be, having shifted from a very pass-happy attack on early downs, having shifted from a team that was not investing much in the interior of their offensive line, like they're finding out what they are, and that's going to take some time. And doing that while you're integrating a new quarterback who has not played pro football before is going to make it even tougher.
I also think that there was always likely they were going to take a step back in the win-loss column, obviously, but even in just like the
Sure.
general quality of the team and what the expectations
Sure.
were coming into the year. Even if you thought that JJ McCarthy could come in and be the 15th best quarterback in the league, in my mind, it was always going to be about 2026. It was always going to be about building up to that season in his second year as a starter. And that was going to include some growing pains. When you consciously take a step back as a franchise, it's hard to deal with. It's hard to
Yeah.
deal with it as a fan base because you're like, wait a second, they're worse? Like, what are we doing here? But the goal is not to be incrementally better than you were the year before
Right.
every year. The goal is to win the Super Bowl. And so I
Right.
think
That's
if that is the goal, everything that has happened over the last 6 months, I don't think pushes me off from the idea that what they've been doing is in the best interest of that eventual goal.
right. And that's sort of the Sam Darnold side of this conversation, right? Like the idea of we should have just brought Sam back. They tried to get a deal done with Sam. I don't know what the terms of that contract were, but clearly he left to go to Seattle. Think about how right things went last year for the Vikings. They win 14 games with Sam Darnold at quarterback. He has a 95th percentile season versus expectations. Like he is really good for stretches of the year. Their defense is phenomenal. Second in football, I think by EPA per play, but certainly if not second in the top 5 by every metric. Creating a ton of turnovers, really good. They didn't even come close to winning a playoff
They've
game,
got destroyed.
let alone making it to the Super Bowl. Like that, if that's what your ceiling is with Sam Darnold, like how was it going to be better this year than it was last year if they brought Sam
It
Darnold
wouldn't
back?
be because if you're going to pay
Right,
Sam Darnold, then there's no Will Fries or Ryan Kelly. Right? Like
right,
that's how this is going to go. And so you're always going
right.
to have to rob Peter to pay Paul. And I think because of that, and because you had to go to the young quarterback, there were always going to be some frustrating moments early in the
Yes,
season. It's always going to happen.
right.
Bill
We agree.
Barnwell, sincerely appreciate the time, sir. Please tell everyone where they can check out all of your wonderful work this season.
ESPN.com. Written stuff is going up there. I am hosting the Bill Barnwell show twice a week. We got the idea from me. We started putting it on YouTube this year. We realized it was a good idea. So we started doing that. And you can
Yeah,
find
I
that on
started
YouTube as
YouTube.
well.
I was the first. We were the first podcast ever on YouTube.
We doing the Dominique Foxworth show every Sunday night, so you can check that out Monday morning with myself and Charlie Kravitz. Dominique Foxworth overreacting to what we just saw on Sundays, occasionally on TV, who knows when and where, but just trying to keep track of football, just trying to keep my head above water. I feel like I'm already behind, and we're 2 weeks in, so off to a great start.
That's absolutely how I feel as well. I think that's always how the beginning of the season feels. I trust you to get there, buddy. Always good to chat with you. Really appreciate the time. We will talk to all of you tomorrow. Our week 3 preview will be coming your way. Like Barnwell mentioned, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. Would sincerely appreciate that. We're doing all of our Monday and Thursday night recaps on YouTube this year. So if you want to check those out, this is where you can find them. Obviously, coming to you live from the studio for our Sunday night recap shows, a couple more shows throughout the week. So have enjoyed the beginning of the season so far and all the new stuff we're trotting out. Hope you guys have as well. For now, that's all we got. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for watching. Follow The Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.